The host was bivouacked in the pine woods that clustered about LotR Beacon, a tall hill standing up from the long ridges of the Druidan forest that lay beside the great road in East Anorion.
I am sick of waiting around.
They were less than a day's ride from the outwalls of Minas Tirith that encircled the townlands. Scouts had been sent ahead. Some had not returned. Others, hastening back, had reported that the road was held in force against them. A host of the enemy was encamped upon it, 3 miles west of Armandine, and some strength of men was already thrusting along the road and was no more than 3 leagues away. Orcs were roving in the hills and woods along the roadside. "Is the enemy coming then?" asked Mary anxiously. "Are those their drums?" I began to think I was imagining them, as no one else seemed to take any notice of them. "Nay, nay," said Elfhelm. "The enemy is on the road, not in the hills. You hear the Woses, the wild men of the woods. Thus they talk together from afar. They still haunt Druidan Forest, it is said. Remnants of an older time they be, living few and secretly, wild and wary as the beasts. But they have offered their services to Theoden. Even now one of their headmen is being taken to the king." Presently Merry came to an open space where a small tent had been set up for the king under a great tree. A large lantern, covered above, was hanging from a bough and cast a pale circle of light below. There sat Theoden and Eomer, and before them on the ground sat a strange squat shape of a man, gnarled as an old stone, and the hairs of his scanty beard straggled on his lumpy chin like dry moss. He was short-legged and fat-armed, thick and stumpy, and clad only with grass about his waist. "No, father of horsemen," he said, "we fight not, hunt only, kill Gorgon in woods, hate orc folk. You hate Gorgon too. We help as we can. Wild men have long ears and long eyes, know all paths. Wild men live here before stone houses, before tall men come up out of water. Stone City is shut. Fire burns there outside, now inside too. You wish to come there, then you must be quick. But Gorgon and men out of far away," he waved a short gnarled arm eastward, "sit on horse road, very many, more than horsemen. You have a score of scores counted 10 times and 5. They have more. Big fights, and who will win? And many more walk round walls of stone houses." "Alas, he speaks all too shrewdly," said Theoden, "and our scouts say that they have cast trenches and stakes across the road. We cannot sweep them away in sudden onset." "And yet we need great haste," said Eomer. "Mundberg is on fire." "Let Garnburigan finish," said the wild man. "More than one road he knows. He will lead you by road where no pits are, no Gorgon walk, only wild men and beasts." At length Theoden turned to the wild man. "We will receive your offer," he said. For though we leave a host of foes behind, what matter? If the stone city falls, then we shall have no returning. If it is saved, then the orc host itself will be cut off. All went well that day, and no sight or sound had they of the enemy waiting to waylay them. The wild men had put out a screen of wary hunters, so that no orc or roving spy should learn of the movements in the hills. The light was more dim than ever as they drew nearer to the beleaguered city, and the riders passed in long files like dark shadows of men and horses. Each company was guided by a wild woodman, but old Garn walked beside the king. The start had been slower than was hoped, for it had taken time for the riders, walking and leading their horses, to find paths over the thickly wooded ridges behind their camp and down into the hidden Stonewain Valley. It was late in the afternoon when the leaders came to wide grey thickets stretching beyond the eastward side of Armandine.
Khan Buri Khan has proven trustworthy. Ready your steed, my friend. Let us ride to the encircling wall.
On either side of the road, the host of Rohirrim was moving silently. Now the road passing about the skirts of Mindolurin turned southward. Far away and almost straight ahead there was a red glow under the black sky, and the sides of the great mountain loomed dark. They were drawing near the Rammas of the Pelennor. The king rode in the midst of the leading company, his household men about him. Elfhelm's Eored came next, and now Merry noticed that Dernhelm had left his place, and in the darkness was moving steadily forward, until at last he was riding just in rear of the king's guard. There came a check. Merry heard voices in front speaking softly. Outriders had come back who had ventured forward almost to the wall. They came to the king. "There are great fires, Lord," said one. "The city is all set about with flame, and the field is full of foes. But all seem drawn off to the assault. As well as we could guess, there are few left upon the outwall, and they are heedless, busy in destruction."
6,000 spears have come to Gondor at her darkest hour. It will become the hour of Theoden and of Rohan. We must join the line.
Guthlaf!
Yes, my lord!
I have need of your horn, loyal Guthlaf. Arise! Arise, riders of Theoden! Fell deeds awake, fire and slaughter. Spear shall be shaken. Shield shall be splintered. A sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride now. Ride to Gondor!
Merry was riding behind Dernhelm, clutching with the left hand, while with the other he tried to loosen his sword in its sheath. He felt now bitterly the truth of the old king's words. "In such a battle, what would you do, Meriadoc?" "Just this," he thought, "encumber a rider and hope at best to stay in my seat and not be pounded to death by galloping hoofs." The city was now nearer. A smell of burning was in the air, and a very shadow of death. The horses were uneasy, but the king sat upon Snowmane, motionless, gazing upon the agony of Minas Tirith. Suddenly the king cried to Snowmane, and the horse sprang away. Behind him his banner blew in the wind, white horse upon a field of green, but he outpaced it. After him thundered the knights of his house, but he was ever before them. Fey he seemed, or the battle fury of his fathers ran like new fire in his veins, and he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the battle of the Valar when the world was young. His golden shield was uncovered, and lo, it shone like an image of the sun, and the grass flamed into green about the white feet of his steed. For morning came, morning and a wind from the sea, and darkness was removed, and the hosts of Mordor wailed, and terror took them, and they fled and died, and the hoofs of wrath rode over them. And then all the host of Rohan burst into song, and they sang as they slew, for the joy of battle was on them, and the sound of their singing that was fair and terrible came even to the city. Theoden, king of the Mark, had reached the road from the gate to the river, and he turned towards the city that was now less than a mile distant. He slackened his speed a little, seeking new foes, and his knights came about him, and Dernhelm was with them. Ahead, nearer the walls, Elfhelm's men were among the siege engines, hewing, slaying, driving their foes into the fire pits. Well nigh all the northern half of the Pelennor was overrun, and there camps were blazing, orcs were flying towards the river like herds before the hunters, and the Rohirrim went hither and thither at their will. But they had not yet overthrown the siege, nor won the gate. Many foes stood before it, and on the further half of the plain were other hosts still unfought. Suddenly, in the midst of the glory of the king, his golden shield was dimmed. The new morning was blotted from the sky. Dark fell about him. Horses reared and screamed. Men cast from the saddle lay grovelling on the ground. To me, cried Theoden. Up, Eorlingas! Fear no darkness! But Snowmane, wild with terror, stood up on high, fighting with the air, and then with a great scream he crashed upon his side. A black dart had pierced him. The king fell beneath him.
Begone, carrion lord! Leave the dead in peace!
Come not between the Nazgul and his prey. You will know worse things than death in the chamber of the eye.
It is nothing to me. Still, I will hinder you.
Say you so? No living man may hinder me.
But no living man am I. You look upon a woman. Eowyn I am, daughter of Eomund. You stand between me and my lord and king. Begone, if you be not deathless. I will smite you if you touch him. Ah!
My lord.
Farewell, Master Meriadoc. I go now to my father's... Even in their mighty company, I will not now be ashamed.
Forgive me for breaking your command, my lord.
It is forgiven when you sit in peace with your pipe. Think of me. But where is Eomer? He must be king after me. And I would send word to Eowyn. She did not want me to go.
My lord, she is...
Hail, King of Knock. Ride now to victory. Bid Eowyn farewell.
Mourn not overmuch. Mighty was the fallen, and so too was his enemy. We will weep when his mound is raised. Cleowina, we will make a song of the dead, so they will never be forgotten. Theoden, king. Deowina. How can this be? Eowyn? Eowyn, how came you to be here? What devilry is this? Death, death, death! Death take us all! Death, ride to ruin! Death! 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 Death!
New forces of the enemy were hastening up the road from the river, and from under the walls came the legions of Morgul, and from the southward fields came footmen of Harad, with horsemen before them, and behind them rose the huge backs of the Mumakil, with war towers upon them. But northward the white crest of Eomer led the great front of the Rohirrim, which he had again gathered and marshalled. And out of the city came all the strength of men that was in it. And the silver swan of Dol Amroth was borne in the van, driving the enemy from the gate. And now the fighting waxed furious on the fields of the Pelennor, and the din of arms rose upon high, with the crying of men and the neighing of horses. Horns were blown and trumpets were braying, and the Mumakil were bellowing as they were goaded to war. Under the south walls of the city, the footmen of Gondor now drove against the legions of Morgul that were still gathered there in strength. But the horsemen rode eastward to the succour of Eomer, Hurin the Tall, Warden of the Keys, and the Lord of Losarnak, and Hirluin of the Green Hills, and Prince Imrahil the Fair, with his knights all about him. Wherever the Mumakil came, there the horses would not go, but blenched and swerved away, and the great monsters were unfought, and stood like towers of defence, and the Haradrim rallied about them. Anduin from the bend at the Harlond so flowed that from the city men could look down it lengthwise for some leagues, and the far-sighted could see any ships that approached, and looking thither they cried in dismay. For the black against the glittering stream they beheld a fleet borne up on the wind, dromunds, and ships of great draught with many oars, and with black sails bellying the breeze. "The corsairs of Umbar!" men shouted. "The corsairs of Umbar! Look, the corsairs of Umbar are coming!" So Belfalas is taken, and the Ethir, and Lebanon is gone. The corsairs are upon us. It is the last stroke of doom. Upon the foremost ship a great standard broke, and the wind displayed it as she turned towards the Harlond. There flowered a white tree, and that was for Gondor, but 7 stars were about it, and a high crown above it, the signs of Elendil that no lord had borne for years beyond count. And the stars flamed in the sunlight, for they were wrought of gems by Arwen, daughter of Elrond, and the crown was bright in the morning, for it was wrought of mithril and gold. Thus came Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Elessar, Isildur's heir, out of the paths of the dead, borne upon a wind from the sea to the kingdom of Gondor. And the mirth of the Rohirrim was a torrent of laughter and a flashing of swords, and the joy and wonder of the city was a music of trumpets and a ringing of bells. But the hosts of Mordor were seized with bewilderment, and a great wizardry it seemed to them that their own ships should be filled with their foes. And a black dread fell on them, knowing that the tides of fate had turned against them, and their doom was at hand. For now men leapt from the ships to the quays of the Harlond, and swept north like a storm. There came Legolas and Gimli wielding his axe, and Halbarad with the standard, and Elladan and Elrohir with stars on their brow, and the dour-handed Dunedain, rangers of the north, leading a great valour of the folk of Lebanon and Larmedon, and the fiefs of the south. But before all went Aragorn with the flame of the west, Anduril like a new fire kindled, Narsil reforged as deadly as of old, and upon his brow was the star of Elendil. And so at length Eomer and Aragorn met in the midst of the battle, and they leaned on their swords and looked on one another and were glad. And in that hour the great battle of the field of Gondor was over, and not one living foe was left within the circuit of the Rammas. All were slain, save those who fled to die, or to drown in the red foam of the river.
Why am I still here, and so many good men?
But many others were hurt or maimed or dead upon the field. The axes hewed Forlong as he fought alone and unhorsed, and both Duilin of Morthond and his brother were trampled to death when they assailed the Mumakil, leading their bowmen close to shoot at the eyes of the monsters. Neither Herluin the Fair would return to Pinath-Gellion, nor Grimbold to Grimslade, nor Halbarad to the Northlands, dour-hounded ranger. No few had fallen, renowned or nameless, captain or soldier, for it was a great battle, and the full count of it no tale has told.
The field is
So long afterward a maker in Rohan said in his song of the mounds of Mundberg, "We heard of the horns in the hills ringing, the swords shining in the south kingdom. Steeds went striding to the stoning land, as wind in the morning, war was kindled. There Theoden fell, Thengling mighty, to his golden halls and green pastures in the northern fields never returning, High Lord of the host. Harding and Guthlaf, Dunher and Dalewyne, doughty Grimbold, Herefara and Herebrand, Horn and Fastred, fought and fell there in a far country. In the mounds of Mundberg under mould they lie, with their league fellows, lords of Gondor, neither Herluin the Fair to the hills by the sea, nor Forlong to the old flowering vales, ever to Arnak to his own country returned in triumph, nor the tall bowmen, Derafin and Duilin, to their dark waters, Meres of Morthond under mountain shadows. Death in the morning and at day's ending, lords took and lowly. Long now they sleep under grass in Gondor by the great river. Grey now as tears, gleaming silver. Red then it rolled, roaring water. Foam dyed with blood flamed at sunset. As beacons mountains burned to evening. Red fell the dew in Ramasekor.